tomorrow we will have more. This was quick, and we still have time to edit and to add to this footage. So I'm happy to announce our next participant, a phenomenal person, a young man, open, very lively, very sincere, and very strong. I would like to invite to this stage Dmytro Schebetyuk, the founder of the initiative Ukraine-Moldova. There are a few of us, but we have to greet him. Here's the mic, the clicker. And you have lots of awards and lots of achievements, but I really admire you, your strength, and the way you inspire all of us, and me in particular. So I leave the stage to you. You'll discuss the things that you've prepared. I announce the inclusiveness, but you can discuss it in more detail. Dmytro Schebetyuk, and as Andrei mentioned, I am a co-founder for Dostupno.ua. This is accessibility and inclusiveness for disabled people, for living a full life, and one of the most important goals is to motivate owners of different companies, catering business, so forth, for inclusiveness, and including special patrons. But I would like to invite you to watch this footage first.
Люди з інвалідністю можуть все. Круто, чи не так? Не завжди. Часто це виглядає ось так. А може бути так. А яким ви зробите своє місто?
Have you ever held babies? Everyone has the experience. Do you remember the first moment when you pick up a baby? Recently, I had a nephew, and he was so small and so fragile. I just touched him, but something is wrong with the sound or the volume. But I would touch him, but I could not hold him because I was afraid that I would break him. And my sister said, "Would you like to hold him?" Yes, of course I wanted to. So at last I stretched out my arms. She put the baby into my arms. He started screaming. And that was my first contact with this baby. I was very much afraid that I would do something wrong to the child. And then he was on the couch, and he was just lying around, and I wanted to turn him. And I actually twisted his arm, and I was afraid that I would do something wrong to him. The grandma and the sister, you broke his arm, and I was really frustrated. That was my contact, first contact, and the sister was also a bit upset, but then we understood that he wanted to eat, and he just screamed, not because of my handling, but because of his condition. And with the youngest babies, you can have contact, you can turn them around, and then I had a niece, and my friends had babies. I had less apprehension. In the same way, people with a disability, some people are afraid of approaching them and talking to them because they never had any experience with such people. But you try once and you understand that we are people like you, and I use public transport, and I've come here, you can touch me. You cannot hold me, of course, like a baby anymore, but I am just one of you, like anybody else, and inclusiveness is needed not just for a limited number of people. The wheelchair people, they constitute a very small segment of the target audience that needs accessibility. 55% of the people, in fact, belong to the low mobility groups, moms with the prams, wheelchair, the disabled people, people with traumas, injured people, elderly people. So this audience is much, much broader than you can imagine, than you see on the surface. And if you prepare amenities for some people, you prepare them for a large number of people. And wheelchairing in Ukraine, I can say that 12 to 17% of the areas are fully accessible. And that's optimistic, I would say. And only 4% of the facilities are fully accessible according to the state construction standards in the same way as they are designed. And this is an inaccessible universe, an inaccessible space. And in our society, we still have Soviet stereotypes. It's the time when we had no disabled people in the Soviet Union, and it was bad to be different, to be special. And my grandpa, before my injury, had the insult and heart attack. We gave him this wheelchair and invited him to walk in the streets. He said, I'm not doing this. It's better for some children. They would walk me, but no wheelchair for me, sorry, because it was a bad thing. It was in his mindset, set the old stereotypes. And when I had the injury, they said, in a year, I had surgeries and all that. They said, in a year you will walk with a stick. And I was thinking about that stick. I wanted to walk, I wanted to run on my own without any aid. And now you can see that I'm a wheelchair person. And when I visited Europe, I understood that that was about mobility. Mobility, and the mobility is about comfort, and it's your choice whether you stay at home or you enjoy your life in full capacity. When my grandpa thought about his dignity and the impropriety of being a wheelchair person, he was mistaken, because his dignity was injured because he could not exceed the public areas, the society. And you know that people tend thinking that a broken leg, 2 months you spend at home, or you stretch your leg, ligaments, you strain your ligaments. But why sitting at home for 2 months is not much, maybe for some people, but if you can visit the interesting events, you can use the opportunity. In Europe again, my girlfriend went to Europe and saw many children using their crutches and all sorts aids, walking aids, wheelchairs and so forth. I thought they were careless, and that's why they were all injured. They were just all visible, and she understood that when she came back to Ukraine.
Well, she thought that maybe in Ukraine they've invented some pills and the children are very cautious, but unfortunately it's not true. 2.7 million people are disabled people here in Ukraine. They live with disabilities, and it's just an average amount, but in reality maybe there are more than those. And I like to underscore that in our society we have a vicious circle. When, well, I'm asking the owner of some facility, why aren't you making your facility accessible? He says, because people with wheelchairs never come to my facility, but those who are using the wheelchair are saying, how can we come to your facility if you are not accessible? Subway in the cities, we have metro, subway in Kiev, and when we met the representatives of the subway, we were discussing how to make the movement in the metro of Kiev more comfortable for the people with disabilities and for the strollers, with the children in the strollers. And they say, we are not making it more comfortable because people don't use it. And then I did not understand that mothers with the children with the strollers are limiting themselves because the space is not accessible, and they cannot visit the places which are not accessible for the strollers, for the wheelchairs, for the people who try to live independently. So, and we are trying to explain the representatives of the subway, of the metropolitan, that we cannot use it because it's dangerous for us. So at these discussions, we raise the issues why it is so important for the cities to involve the representatives of the disabled people to decision-making and the groups who constitute the population with limited mobility. In the Oblast State Administration, there is a young girl who is in the wheelchair, and she's working in the administration. And she told me a story about voting for the budget. The funds were allocating for various things, and all of a sudden there came the queries from the NGOs who represented the people with disabilities. And actually there was 100,000 grivnas allocated for a budget. And, well, actually, she considers that this was a wasting money project, so they were not efficient. And when she refused to finance these projects, she said, I'm not accepting these projects to be financed. Let the heads of these NGOs come here, and we will discuss with them what is the better way to implement it. And the councillors told me, oh, you have refused the NGO of the people with disabilities. They are going to tear you to pieces. But she was the only person who could quite soberly understand that this will be a not appropriate usage of funds. And all the councillors who were sitting there on the council, they are not disabled people. They did not understand the needs. Yeah, they quite often think that we should spend more funds for the programs for people with a disability, but they never think about the expediency of these programs and the usefulness of these programs, efficiency of these programs. I think that the city of Lviv is a nice place with a good access. In spite of the fact that this is a very old city and the center of this city was constructed many centuries ago, but at this particular moment, maybe, it's one of the few cities where one can move without any impediments inside the city. There is another story about the catering facilities and things like that. That's a different story. But as far as movement in the city, they provide the best solutions for the people of disabilities. And the city of Vinnytsia is a good example as well. And they are NGO, which is called the Harmony. And they create the ideal situation. For a certain period of time, the Harmonia NGO was moving the projects of accessibility in the city. And city government also decided to initiate this cooperation with this NGO. And the authorities were supporting the NGOs which represented the disabled people. The majority of the people who work in this NGO are disabled themselves, and they are very well aware of the issues of the problems, and they can help the city to efficiently spend the funds which are allocated for these projects. And when the chief architects of the city come, and they always ask, they demonstrate their projects, and they are asking the NGOs who represent the disabled people to sign those projects and to confirm that they are good for from the point of view of the access. But people with disabilities want to live in a comfortable city, accessible city, and they understand the needs, and they insist on the developmental projects to be adjusted to the needs of the disabled people, because they also follow the implementation of these designs and construction in accordance with these designs, because sometimes the amenities could exist in the design, but they could not be, or sometimes they are not being implemented when the facility is being constructed. So the monitoring is very important aspect. Sometimes it is necessary to choose 10 projects out of 200, and the community of the city selects those projects. And when they select 10 best projects, they send to the city government, and they want them to be implemented. And they also have to be approved by the organizations which represent the interests of the disabled people. 2.7 million people with disability in Ukraine is a big number. When I am using the subway, the metro, because I use the public transportation in this city, and maybe 20 people help me to get access to the public transportation vehicles. Well, 20 people per day help me, and they help me to resolve my problem of limited mobility. But a lot of people stay at home. But even if those people go out of their buildings, of their apartments, 2, 4 people help them to move in the city. There are 2 million children of preschool age. Their parents are taking them to various places in the city. And also the friends and the relatives of these people also help them. So it means that there are lots of people who are keen to increase the accessibility. 600,000 people are traumatized every year, and they making part of the low mobility groups of population for a certain period of time. If we take an average lifespan of 70 years in Ukraine, so we can tell that, well, those senior citizens also have limited mobility, and people help them to move around the city. 14 million people in Ukraine are pensioners, senior citizens, and the majority of them also need all the accessibility. When we were asking about about the subways, to underground crossings, well, they are not all of them are equipped with the amenities which will help the people with limited abilities to use them. And you, as the representatives of the cities, have an opportunity to satisfy these special needs. And we should not consider them as special needs, but this should be a norm in the cities, because so many people are affected by this. And you have an opportunity to make your cities more accessible. And please do that. And we should enable those people who need these amenities to be able to walk in the streets and enjoy life. And thank you very much for this inspiring speech. Please, if you have questions to Dmytro, please do that. Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to support everything you've said, because at a certain point of time, I broke my leg, fractured my leg, and I had a surgery, and then I had to go through the rehabilitation period for months. I was using the crutches, and the feelings were absolutely awful. And then I lived in Italy, and it was very difficult to cope with this rehabilitation. And actually, I also was rehabilitated in Chernivtsi, in my native cities, and the driver of the public bus stopped 10 meters away from the bus stop, though he saw me, but nevertheless he did that. And if a person is moving normally, it is not a problem. But I was using the crutches. And then when I finally got to that bus, I actually complained. And the passengers were supporting me. And I think that maybe it was a good lesson to that driver. And I think that it's important to attract attention to the people with this problem. It's not a question, it was just an intervention to support everything you've said. And, well, Katie.
We have a question from Katie Ward.
У нас є питання від Katie Ward.
For your presentation. I'm from Canada, and I'm very proud to say, a very inclusive country. In fact, we do not use the word disabled. We use the word differently abled, because we even see the word disabled as not inclusive. And I remember I was shocked the first time I came to Ukraine, I heard the word invalid, an old word, I guess. And I was shocked. And I thought, okay, not only do things like stairways and rampways and transit systems need to change, but I think we need to change the way we talk about people who are differently abled. Because for me, as you know, however you want to categorize my abilities, it was a very discriminatory term, and I was shocked to hear it. And I'm not sure from your perspective, you know, what's appropriate language to be talking about these issues, because in Canada, we're very clear. We talk about differently abled, and we try to use words that are inclusive, so we don't categorize people as disabled, invalid. We try to accept everybody's level of participation in society. So this was an interesting culture shock for me when I came here. So I'd like to hear your perspective on the semantics and how we talk about accessibility and ability from a municipal leadership point of view.
Thank you, Kerry. It's a good question. He didn't hear the question because he was not using the translation equipment. Now the anchorman is trying to repeat your question in Ukrainian because he was not listening to the translation. So I'm not going to repeat all that. He repeats the translation in Ukrainian because the speaker was not listening to the translation. Nobody gave him the translation equipment. From my point of view, even if we are, we even should not even use the different able term because we have names, we have our hobbies, we have professions, and when you see an individual, we have to see an individual first of all. That's the most important thing. Now we are talking about a person with disabilities, and now the word person is a leading word in this combination of words, and the disability is the second word. Maybe this expression is being used for mass media and also for Ukrainian legislation, so that they would understand who has the privileges and who is given the privileges. The person with disability, and maybe the person with limited possibilities. Limited possibilities is no good as well. Can you lift the weight of 200 kilos and but can you fly the business class or first class in the plane or stay in the 5-star hotel? Well, everybody has limited possibilities and opportunities, so this term might be relevant to all of us. Well, we have a very good discussion on this issue. A question. Good morning, Dmytro. I am from the city of Yuzhno, from Odessa Oblast. Come to our city and you will see how we have arranged our public space. And it is accessible and comfortable for the people with whatever opportunities, with the strollers and wheelchairs, so that they are comfortable in there. And a question, from your point of view, as a person who practically lives with this issue every day, how we should re-equip the stairs in the multi-storied buildings so that you might use them comfortably. Well, we know what to do with the sidewalks. We understand what needs to be done. It is possible to do, and even with the buses and the public transit. But what can we do with the stairways? What should we do to make them more comfortable for you? Thank you for your question. Well, each situation should be resolved in a different way. If these are multi-storied buildings, apartment buildings, which have been built without the elevators in the olden times, and when an individual lives in a top mandatory. Maybe it is necessary to create a program of moving this person in the comfortable building, apartment building. Maybe it is possible to build an elevator in the building or next to the building. Well, there are low-cost solutions in this respect. If there are stairways, well, if we use the new technologies, well, there are the new technologies which could be equipped with the automatic, devices to lift the wheelchair. But if an individual lives on top floor, it will be very expensive to do, and there is no sense. But don't buy those devices which transport the wheelchairs. And because they are not very comfortable, because they move you one step at a time and it takes a long time. It is necessary to resolve these issues as, at unique situations. So you should not use those rails on the steps, on the stairs, because they don't resolve the issue of people who move in the wheelchairs, and even for the strollers they are not acceptable because the wheelchairs are of different widths.
I wanted to ask you this question. It has to do with your last final statement. We have the mayors of our municipalities, not 150, a bit fewer, but the most active are still here. And the message is great. Your last statement for this session, for today, what would you like to say? Rapidly, to kill the mockingbird and try yourself in the shoes of another person. And how can I move if I'm in a wheelchair, if I'm committed to a wheelchair? And try to imagine crossing the road, entering the office. Try to think whether you have the facilities, the lavatory that is accessible and available, the yellow stripes if somebody has problems seeing things, and the ramps. Let's thank Dmytro for his presentation. Dmytro Schebetyuk, thank you very much. Now we are approaching the final part of this event. You are patient people indeed, but tomorrow is another day, a very exciting one. So for the final words of today, and with a very special invitation, I would like to invite CEO of Data Group, Mikhail Shlemba, and the final remarks from him. While he is coming, I would like to invite all the mayors to sign the manifesto. Good evening. I would like to say that innovation is by 20% ideas and by 80% implementation. The result, in other words. And all the signatures under the Innovators Manifesto should be translated into a result. So I invite all of you to identify 3 ideas today that you would promise to implement, promise to yourself for next year. And if some of these ideas have to do with a safe place, safe town, a safe city, let's think how we can implement that. If there are other ideas, there are many colleagues that have already implemented that. So I invite you to use this opportunity for networking, for talking and socializing. And now we are invited to have dinner. Thank you very much. A round of applause to Mikhailo. If you haven't yet played with the interactive Data Group stand, you're invited to do so. And Visa, our partner, have also a data stand, pixelated relay, another interactive stand. You have already talked to the superheroes of of all times with an iPad and ID. Tomorrow we'll have a whole day of case studies from the Ukrainian experience. That will be a great opportunity to exchange experience and great 2 days for networking, for getting together. And Irina Ozimak is inviting us, and at the end, if I would like to have the last round of applause for yourself, and you're all invited to our dinner. And tomorrow I won't be with you because I am going to Khmelnytskyi.